Merci. Hello. Hi. So thank you for coming here. I expect you've all had very long weeks here in Paris, and this is the wind down period. But I'm very excited to talk to you about Wallet UX today, where we are and where we go from here. So first, I guess in this talk, I'm going to talk about three things. This is the first time I give this talk, so you'll have to bear with me with some slides back and forth, and potentially my not knowing exactly how long it runs. But I'll talk about three main things, why this topic really matters, and I think Wallet UX is really at the core of what Web3 becomes as a project on the internet. Asking ourselves, what is a wallet really, and what are we trying to do with wallets, which I think we have to understand in order to understand how we get our users to sign things and perform transactions in our apps in a way that feels native to these apps. And then finally talking about what the cutting edge looks like today in terms of building wallets and interacting with users in a self-sovereign way. So with that, I'll introduce myself first and why I'm here, and I guess why I feel like I can talk about this topic. I am Henri Stern. I used to work at Protocol Labs for a number of years on things like IPFS and Filecoin, and I left to start a company called Privy. And Privy is a single library to onboard all of your users to Web3. We add authentication flows basically for users, whether they are crypto OGs and have 15 wallets spread across MetaMask, Rainbow, and other providers, or whether they don't know what a wallet is, they don't care, they just want to get to your app, and they need to be able to perform transactions in order to do so. And the product, as I alluded to, is really built around these two sort of core pillars. The first is third-party connectors, enabling you to support wallets across environments, across browsers, across devices, trying to save you from the circle of death that is I click MetaMask on my mobile phone, I get taken inside the app, I connect my wallet to my app, get taken back to the app, then I get taken to the app store, and then I'm stuck forever. That's the sort of thing that we try to help you not have happen. And the second piece, obviously, is embedded wallets. For a user who doesn't know what a wallet is, can they come in with an email, a phone number, a social login, and be ready to go? And can we provide you with a single abstraction in the IP 1193 provider that looks the same regardless of whether the user is coming in with MetaMask or coming in with their phone number? So this is a little more shilling, which I'll skip through. But the question is, why do both? Why do we take on both the users who really know the space and don't need any help handling wallets? And so here on the left, you've got one of our customers, Shibuya, which is a very Web3 native product that has users coming in with wallets most often. And on the right, you've got another one of our customers, Courtyard, which is a product that caters to card collectors, physical card collectors, who don't know about Web3 and don't necessarily care. So why are we trying to serve both of these customer segments, even though they cater to different users? And I think this is part of the reason why this whole question of wallets matters so much in the space. The probably biggest meme in Web3 that I keep hearing year over year is, we're going to onboard the next billion users. And the current paradigm, I guess to put it bluntly, of what a wallet looks like will not be how we onboard the next billion users. It takes a little bit too much work to understand, okay, now I've downloaded this third-party extension, I've saved the mnemonic somewhere, okay, but now I have this one account, but I actually clicked on this other account and I need to switch networks. It's just a lot of complexity for a user to get through if what they're trying to do is a simple task on the app. And I think on the flip side, simply handing over the ability for generating user signatures over to apps doesn't achieve what we're trying to do either. If we're trying to build something that is really a user-owned internet, we have to have this topic of self-sovereignty be brought up. We have to have users be in charge of what they put out and how you gather consent from them. And yet the experience needs to feel a whole lot better than it does today. And so we think that magic happens at the intersection where native apps are built for mainstream users. And that's why we build in the way that we do. I alluded to this a second ago, but basically signatures are really core to user-owned internet. Without improving wallet UX thoughtfully, there are really two outcomes for this space. The first is crypto remains a financial infrastructure first and foremost, and we never move beyond it. I think the cat's out of the bag on DeFi generally, but I think consumer crypto has a long way to go. And solving this issue is critical to actually unblocking consumer crypto. The bizarro outcome where we do this but we do it wrong is crypto ceases to be user-centric. for every app a wallet, and that wallet exists only within that app, and it ends up being a user account, the same as we've had for the last 40 years on the internet, 20 years on the internet. So with that, having set the stage for why I think this is one of the most important topics in crypto today, let's dig into what a wallet is. I think we need to understand the thing we're trying to deconstruct in order to build something better. So there's this, maybe in honor of the Oppenheimer movie that is coming out later this week, there's this story from Richard Feynman in which he goes to a biology class. He's a physicist, and he asks, can you give me a map of the cat? And one of the biologists in the room says, a map of the cat? Certainly you mean, and I'm actually looking through my notes to remember what it is that she says. She says, certainly you mean a zoological chart. And the fact that I had to look it up, I think, talks to the importance of naming, which is a map of the cat is a very descriptive way of thinking about a zoological chart. And yet, to the expert, it's not a map of the cat, it's a zoological chart. And I think I bring this story up because the name really matters. What is a wallet? And I think there's a really good piece out there by Gabby Goldberg on stop calling it a wallet because it has too many meanings. And by conflating all of these meanings behind a single name, it makes it really, really hard to convey to developers and to users what it is they're trying to do with the wallet at any given time. So all of these are wallets. Obviously, they have different form factors. They have different security guarantees. They have different threat models that they operate under. So we need to unpack this a little bit. So let's start off with the technicals. So we'll skin the cat, head to tail. There's this tweet that I really liked, which was, the core reason why wallets are the #1 issue in crypto adoption today is because they're used for two things: custody of funds, best in cold storage; transacting in apps, best in browser. We need separate products, wallets and passports. This points already to two things, which is, cold storage, browser, we're talking about different threat environments, we're talking about different security guarantees. And then obviously actions, custodying funds versus transacting. These are already a few ways to start splitting what a wallet does. So, we can already start distinguishing between basically these two core functions, the account and the signer. The account secures assets, is responsible for kind of securing this is my identity according to this wallet. And the signer is able to perform actions on that account to change balances, to indicate intent, and so on and so forth. And historically, obviously, these two functions were managed by the same piece of software, an EOA wallet. So how do you evaluate a wallet? If you're trying to purchase a wallet, you should talk to us, but there are many people offering these services. At large, I think there are really 5 factors that matter most. First, customizability. And that is, can this wallet fit into my app? Does it feel natural for it to be here, or does it feel like basically I've just grafted on a completely separate piece of software that has nothing to do with what I do? Second, custody. Who must my user trust in order to use my product, in order to use my app? Recovery. Are my users protected from their own mistakes? Integratability. Will this work within my existing user model, or do I have to completely shred my backend basically to integrate this wallet? And security. Are my users protected from attacks or malicious actions outside of the scope of user trust? And I'm going to spoil it by saying, unfortunately, there is no one-size-fits-all. All of these involve trade-offs. And so a couple examples, recovery versus security. The straw man of how you can build a simple recovery system for a wallet is, let us store your private keys for you, and we'll give them back when you need them. Obviously, that works. It makes recovery very, very simple. But from a security and trust perspective, it's a completely broken system in which you're entirely handing your digital identity, the entirety of your funds, to a third party. Likewise, you can think about customizability versus custody. A hyper-customizable wallet, let's say I build a dApp that has a single function. I want to allow people to order pizza on chain for $1.50. My custom wallet basically has a single function, which is purchase for $1.50 to this address. It is a wallet that does one thing that does it extraordinarily well. It's going to be the best wallet for my app. And yet, obviously, if my user says, well, I just loaded $100 into this, and now I want to go buy tacos elsewhere, they can't do anything with those funds other than keep buying pizza. So the question of how do you empower users whilst giving them a very straightforward experience that allows them to do what your app is trying to unlock is a really big one. And at its core, basically, I think there's a tension that won't be resolved no matter how much better cryptography we throw at it, which is user experience versus user freedom. And I think that is the sort of core tension around this UX in wallets. We can do a lot with account abstraction. We can do a lot with various advances, but ultimately UX comes down to how are you orienting your user through their app. So yeah, that's the first core insight. I think wallets have to be fluid. Wallets cannot stay monolithic. They cannot stay static. In this case, I guess the user is this police officer who's about to get killed, clearly, by a Terminator. But the wallet must embody the liquid Terminator's form and change so that it fits your app really, really neatly. And here, obviously, it's worth talking about account abstraction. So as I mentioned before, in traditional Ethereum systems, because of the way EOAs were designed, signer and accounts are conjoined. Account abstraction splits the signer, the person who can take action on an account, from the account itself. And so here is, I've been spending a lot of time with a 1-year-old of late. Here is an image of how wallets are broken down. Your traditional EOA is that big block with all of the shapes fitting into it. But if you actually split it out, the wooden block you can think of as a smart contract account. It sits on chain. It holds content, data, assets. And then the signers are the different shapes that you try and fit into it to perform actions with the block. By separating the two, you can unlock much better user experiences. Historically, the smiley here is your app. You had to fit an EOA into your app, and you can kind of see the relative size. You've basically got this massive cube sitting on top of that thing you spent a lot of time crafting. And you might ask yourself, why the hell am I spending, time doing this pixel alignment when at the end, half of the time my users are going to spend in app is going to be spent in a third-party piece of software that I have zero control over. And the advantage, obviously, with account abstraction systems, and 4337 being one of them, is that you can actually split out the signer from the rest of the account functionality so that the signer is deeply integrated into your app as a single tool that's right for you. And yet, you don't need to require the user to sort of have a much deeper account that only exists within your purview. So you can connect that signer in your app to an account that exists outside of your app on the entirety of the internet. I'll plug here a little bit by saying that obviously this has informed a lot of how we build so that our embedded wallets can act either as EOAs or signers. So are we done? Like, is this the end of the talk? We have a promising technical path, but unfortunately we're not done, because the tension comes from bridging that UX gap between what is theoretically possible given the systems that we've built and architected, and what actually gets built by people working on these systems. So let's go through a user journey, and this is the second piece. Great, so now you have these tools, whether you're using 4337 or whether you're using EOAs, you have different ways of generating signatures on behalf of the user. How do you think about your user journey as pertains to the interactions that they have to do on chain? And here maybe a bit of UX 101. Good UX really is about guiding the user. It's about helping the user understand, how did I get here? What should I be doing now? And where am I going next? And as I mentioned before, it's really hard to guide a user when you don't control half of the software on their screen. So going through the user journey, users really interact with wallets in 4 core ways. The first is wallet creation / wallet recovery. It's usually the same mechanism that undergirds both. The second is funding the wallet. And I'm very hopeful that if we give this talk again in like 2 years, that category gets stricken, because basically funding and on-ramps are solved by AA or by other technologies. But today, it's an inevitable part of where users falter when they try and use your app. The third is transaction submission or signature generation. And the fourth is wallet export or interop widely, which is to say, okay, you've got a user now, they've loaded up their wallet with funds they can pay for gas, or you're sponsoring gas on their behalf. They're able to sign a transaction and take an on-chain action through your app. What now? Can they take their wallet with them elsewhere? Can they trade that NFT that they bought from you on OpenSea? So with that, having skinned sort of the wallet sort of 2 ways, technically and from the user standpoint, let's dive into how that actually informs wallet decisions that are made today. And here I'll talk about some of our work. So we're going to take a slightly deeper dive now into embedded wallet creations. There's a number of ways to do this. There are a lot of different products doing it different ways. And again, it's all about trade-offs and what guarantees you want to make to your user and what experiences you want to build for them. But I'll start with a quick primer on embedded wallets, and here I'll talk about multi-party computation and specifically Shamir secret sharing as a flavor of multi-party computation that you can use to get better trade-offs out of that UX custody tension that exists. So we'll see how well this works, but you have your user at the bottom here, and you have your app, the smiley face. When your user first logs in, basically, you are able to create a wallet in a completely separate iframe running in an isolated environment. That's the monkey. So here you've got your little key that appears. That's the wallet being created in the isolated iframe. Great. So now the user basically has this isolated iframe. You can run messages through this iframe. You can get signatures back. You can submit those on chain. You have a wallet that you don't actually have access to because it's running in this isolated domain, but the user has access to, and that fits really flush with the rest of your application. Okay, but now your user logs out and you've lost that wallet. So we need to do a little bit better. We need to make sure that the wallet persists from session to session. And so here we use Shamir secret sharing, a form of MPC, to basically split the private keys behind the wallet into multiple shares. There's an auth share that's stored by Privy. So if your user signed in with email, we will verify that this same email is coming in, and we will return the auth share if it has. And there's a device share stored either in a secure enclave on your phone or in browser secure storage. And from here, we're basically able, when the user logs out, to destroy the key running in the iframe, and then when the user logs back in, to reconstitute A and D inside of the iframe to recreate a key and get the user going again. So your user is able to log in, log out, and they have access to a wallet that sits flush with your app that no one but the user has access to. You never see the keys. Privy never sees the keys. Good. Now, what if your user wants to provision a second device? And this is the base of account recovery. I've lost my device. My device has been stolen. I have both a computer and a phone. I need to use my wallet across both. So obviously, this is where the third key share matters. So we are running a 2 of 3 system. R is the recovery share. And using that recovery share, basically, when the user logs in to the third system, they can basically combine the auth share and the recovery share to create a new set of device shares altogether, reconstitute the same key, and now they're provisioned across 2 devices. Cool. How does that actually look? Well, in this model, and here I'm actually going to go through a few options, which is part of the point. In this model, you can have, and it's hard to see here, but you've basically got a passcode entry at the top. So when your user logs in, we prompt your user to generate a passcode, and the recovery share is basically encrypted using some version of key expansion and that passcode by that user's entropy. So basically, Privy will store the recovery share encrypted with a user secret so that we can never access the recovery share. We never have enough to put the keys back together. But when the user tries and log in, if they can provide the appropriate passcode, we can return the recovery share to them, as we do here, to help them create the same wallet on a new device. Now, the UX unfortunate part of this is that whenever a user signs into a new device, they have to re-enter a password. It's a bit of friction. So you might ask, okay, but I want my wallets to be recoverable with 0 dependence on a third party. I don't even want Privy holding any encrypted materials. So what do you do for me now? And so you might have a second model, which we do. And here, the recovery share is actually stored directly by the user. So you can prompt the user and say, listen, as you create your wallet, or as you create your account, depending on how you want to phrase it, you need to give us access to your iCloud, your Google Drive, your Dropbox, and basically store a key share there. And that way, even if AWS, the whole internet goes down, Privy goes down, the user is able to basically combine their Dropbox account with their device and recover their wallet. So they're good to go. They're not dependent on anyone else. Now, the obvious tricky bit is that when they sign into a new device, not only do they need to enter in a passcode, but they actually need to auth with a third-party system. So it's that much more friction. What if you say, but I don't want any friction for my users? I want them to be able to move across devices completely seamlessly. Well, there's another model in which Privy can provide the entropy through which the recovery share is encrypted. That entropy can be secured using a hardware security module, and so on and so forth. The point I'm trying to make here is that there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and you're basically trading off across the way UX for recoverability. You can get better UX and slightly worse recoverability, or you can get slightly worse UX and slightly better recoverability. And the point is, wallets are not one size fits all. At the end of the day, this is why we've built third-party wallet connectors, is because for some people, what they really want is a ledger that sits in their pocket or a piece of paper that they can use to transact. And I think this is really the lesson here is consider who your user is, consider what assets they're storing as part of your app, and then pick what UX you need for the model that you're building. As you do this, obviously consider all of these parts in the user journey: wallet creation, funding, transaction, and export. And the export point, I think, is the next piece that has the lowest hanging fruit in the space right now. We have written a bit about it, so I'm plugging here our blog, but there's a lot of really interesting work to be done on how do you get wallets to interoperate across websites when they don't sit in the user's browser directly, when they sit with the app itself. So with that, I'm going to conclude. Technological shifts are going to unlock a lot of novel UX for us. I think account abstraction is a huge part of this story that is being told. But it only works provided we build it. I think there's a lot of hand-wavy, finger-snapping saying account abstraction will exist and UX will be solved, and that isn't true unless we build the systems that actually make use of this technology. With account abstraction, you still need a signer. Your user still needs to be able to generate signatures. And so you don't lose, account abstraction itself doesn't solve having to store mnemonic. This is part of why, the whole account abstraction versus MPC debate is not all that interesting. You should use both. Wallets have to be fluid to account for your user experience and your threat model. And the way in which you choose to use a wallet depends on what you build. And I'm very excited to see more and more options so that we can move away from the monolithic consumer wallet. And for what it's worth, I think there's a huge place for consumer wallets in the space. I think there's no way to have better guarantees of complete autonomy and self-custody than a consumer wallet, an app that belongs to me and me only. But it's only one of the flavors that I can get, and depending on the user experience I'm trying to unlock, it might not be the right flavor. And then once more, think through your user story. Think through the touch points at which your user has to interact with on-chain systems, and decide how you want to build your app accordingly. And as always, think about onboarding, think about orientation, and think about the defaults that you build for. And somehow there's an animation here. Thank you very much.
So we're past time, so no time for anything.